So my name is Cathie Forsythe and I'm a social worker. I'm 25 and I did have cancer when I was a teenager.
Yeah. Welcome to this special The CT podcast that is in recognition of Social Work Week. Cathie, tell us about why you are here for this very special episode for Social Work Week.
So my name is Cathie Forsythe and I'm a social worker. I'm 25 and I did have cancer when I was a teenager.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about what that was like then as a teenager having it.
I suppose whenever I first met you, my words to you were
Beep. Like that was said nicer then.
Yeah.
They were then, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So I suppose I was studying to do my A levels when I got my diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't particularly want to engage with you at all. So you worked more with my mum and my siblings and gave them more support than me as such. But yeah.
It's interesting because I think you're right. At that time, you were apprehensive about a stranger coming in to help you with something that I suppose, if I would be correct in saying that you were in slight denial that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Major denial. I suppose the first time I met you, I told you.
Beep.
And then I think the second time I met you, you brought Annalise out to my
Yeah.
house to talk me through what was going to happen going into treatment, which looking back at now was a major help for me. Maybe I wasn't as accepting of it at the time, but I definitely, looking back at it, was a massive help for me, knowing what to expect going in for that treatment.
Yeah. I suppose from the social work brain at me at the time was thinking about, when we talk about tuning ins and you've done all that when you were doing your training and stuff. When I did that at the time, it was, what would Cathie be feeling right now about the fact that she's just been told that she's got thyroid cancer? And in my head, I'm all like, I don't even know what a thyroid was before I started this job. So there'd be an education part of, well, what is thyroid cancer and what does that look like? I was also conscious that as you had spent so long being so fatigued and so tired because of your thyroid issues, that you'd probably spent so long everyone just saying Cathie's just really lazy and she sleeps in all the time. Would I be right?
Yeah, I heard that so often. I remember doing my GCSEs and being told you're just lazy. You just need to get up on after school, going to bed. And you need to get up, you need to stay active, you're just lazy. So
And I suppose when we think about it now from a social work perspective, they were just all points of reminders of failure. They were things that people were telling you to do that you weren't able to do because your body wasn't able, not because you weren't motivated, but because your body wasn't able to do it. And I actually forgot that I had brought Annalise out. But I can totally understand why, because you were about to come down to the same hospital that she was in for the same diagnosis and the same treatment that she was going to have. But not that I was old or anything, but maybe just also hearing it from somebody who has sat on that bed and has been through radioactive iodine treatment and stuff like that.
It definitely helped knowing what to expect. And she made it, don't think she made it sound worse than what it was. She's like, the windows in the room were going to be screwed shut. I was sort of daunted, and then I suppose at least I knew what to expect, rather than whenever I went into that room and realizing, flip, the windows are actually screwed shut in here, and not being able to come out of the room for the week. So
And at what stage did your attitude then sort of change to knowing, well, actually, yes, I'm a social worker and I can benefit from his help? Or did that ever come? Or
I don't actually know. I feel like maybe only lately, maybe that's came.
Okay.
I suppose at the time you did help my mum and my siblings a lot more than me. I suppose I feel like I was just doing my own thing, living life in denial and just getting on with school and just pushing myself to get through school and get my A levels and then go to uni. And I suppose it was only really whenever I came back from uni, I sort of thought, because I didn't know how to get a job in social work once I got my degree, that's when I reached out to you and sort of asked for pointers, and I was like, Simon can actually help me here. So even whenever I was getting into uni, I remember asking you for help to get into uni. So it was probably around that time of going to uni and coming home from uni, I realised I could benefit from you.
And had you always wanted to do social work, or was that
never?
So when did that change?
Probably after I met you and the impact that you had on me. Not that I'm sort of backtracking on myself now, saying that you didn't influence me, but you definitely did influence. I don't know whether it was I was able to see what you were doing for a job and was like, I want his job and I want Helen's job, or what it was. But I remember before I got my diagnosis, never had thought about social work.
Yeah.
I think I thought about like being a nurse or being a lawyer, or nothing that I would actually want to do now.
Yeah.
But it was I think it was when we were doing the CrossFit, the original research.
Yeah.
That I think is whenever I started to think that I wanted to be a social worker and make an impact on people's lives. So
Nice. Okay, I'm glad that was the case.
yeah.
When that process of going to university, because you were very different in the sense of you went away to study social work. You went to Liverpool, right?
Liverpool Hope, yeah.
Yeah. How was that?
That in itself was a whirlwind of emotions, I suppose. Like my mum and dad dropped me off. We all went over on the Friday and they dropped me off. I think it was on the Saturday or the Sunday, and that was it. And I was just left on my own. Never, like, I went by myself, didn't know anybody else that was there, and navigating that on my own was a struggle. Cried every night, I think, for the first semester. But managed to get through it.
Was there an element of that was a bit of a rebelliousness to, I want to get away? Because there was, correct me if I'm wrong, but whenever you were diagnosed and then living at home, there was an intensity to relationships in the house and stuff like that. Was there an element of, I just want to get out of here and I go to Liverpool?
No, I remember I wanted to get into Queen's or McGee, but they both turned me down because I had to do 3 years of my A levels. Because obviously I got my diagnosis in my first year of my A levels.
Yeah.
So I got my predicted grades, but I had failed one of my subjects. So my principal was like, just drop that subject in your A2, just do the 2 subjects.
Yeah.
And at least you'll get the 2 A levels. And then he agreed for me to come back and do a third year of one subject for the 2 years in 1 year.
Yeah.
So whenever my grades came out, it looked like I only had 2 because the third one hadn't come out yet.
Yeah.
So Queen's and McGee both turned me down, and then I got on the ball to Liverpool and that, and they accepted me. So
okay.
Yeah.
And how now, as a fully qualified social worker here in Northern Ireland, when you think about your placements that you had in Liverpool, what is the difference?
I didn't have placements. COVID hit.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
COVID hit whenever I was due to go on to my first placement. So I think I had maybe like a month of placement.
Right.
And then COVID hit. Maybe it wasn't even a month. I can't actually remember now. But COVID hit, and then I came home because I was petrified of getting COVID because my sister, she has no growth hormones, so she had to isolate in the house, and I was absolutely petrified of getting COVID. So I literally packed up my house into my car and drove home.
Wow.
Yeah. So then I finished my placement, so my placement was with asylum seeking kids. Okay. So I literally was just texting them every day, making sure they were living.
Right, okay.
And if they needed anything, and then just linking back in with my manager at the time.
And I suppose placements are meant to be like that opportunity to like explore elements of social work and like interact with clients and develop the skills that they teach you on the course. You didn't really get...
No, so then my third year, then I stayed at home and kept all online. I refused to go back to Liverpool because again I was petrified of getting COVID. So then whenever I was due to do my final placement, it was supposed to be in Grove Road in Ballymena, the 16 plus home there. But I had broke my foot in 2 places.
That's right.
So I couldn't travel back and forth. So again, missed out on that opportunity. And then they managed to source me a placement with Women's Aid in Korean, which was great, but didn't sort of prepare me for statutory social work.
Yeah.
It sort of I think it would have prepared me more for voluntary, but definitely didn't prepare me for going into statutory because I finished my placement, and then in the February, I finished my placement was it September maybe? And then I got my job in statutory social work then in the February.
Okay.
And I graduated in the March. So I literally walked in not knowing anything, knowing anything about even like social work here within Northern Ireland, which was difficult, trying to learn everything firsthand. And then I suppose the team that I was in, manager went off on the long-term sick.
Right, okay.
And was
because there's an element of like I've had students before in the past, and that final placement is where people kind of hope to be in a statutory placement because then it's not easier, but sometimes the transition back into statutory after you're kind of graduate and stuff is better because you've done your safeguarding training, you've done all your manual handling, all of that mandatory training and stuff. You didn't really have that. You were coming into the trust to having to learn all of that stuff in a Northern Ireland context as well.
Yeah, I didn't even know how to get a job in the trust. I didn't even know how to go about getting a job in social work. I remember reaching out to you and Laura and meeting up with Laura and being like, how do I apply for a job? And she was like, just get online and just be looking for social work jobs. And I was like, but like where? What do I do? And I can't remember whether it was you or Laura, but somebody sent me a post they had seen online, and I applied for it. And the social work service manager rang me and offered me the job, but it was through agency at the time. So I was agency for the first, I think, 6 months before I got my trust contract. So
And what field are you in now?
Children's residential. So initially was in family support and intervention team, so like frontline, and now in children's residential.
How do you find children's residential?
I love it.
Yeah.
I really do. Like my colleagues, my managers, and everybody would say I am thriving. I'm not even there a year yet, and I feel like I have came on leaps and bounds from where I was in frontline.
What is it about that compared to family support and intervention that you just kind of resonated with?
Probably no court reports. You have more, I suppose you have more interaction with the kids, and I think I maybe have a slight advantage with being young. And I have really great relationships with the girls, and I think it's because I am young and can sort of relate to them. All of the kids know that I did have cancer when I was their age. Like I've openly told them that and sort of try and relate to them a bit on that. Be like, I did have a social worker, not the exact same as yous, but like I get it as such, and sort of try and relate my trauma to them to try and.
Was it important for you to share that? Because I would imagine that that's turning something which could be seen as a negative into like a badge of honor in the sense, like something that you can relate to them.
It never actually crossed my mind. It just felt right. I suppose like kids, whenever you come in there, will be like, why did you become a social worker? And I sort of just explained a bit about me and why I wanted to be a social worker. So
because I think for so long we're always told to have those appropriate boundaries where we don't give away too much. But sometimes I think when we kind of unpick it a little bit more, it shows the real side of a social worker rather than just a power dynamic, which sometimes, like I've worked in residential children's homes, and I know sometimes that they're weary of any new person coming in, and they want to get to know that person, and so it's really important to kind of have your boundaries. But sometimes there's just honesty and transparency is the best within reason. But I think for me, if I remember back to when I worked in the children's home, it was also a really creative space. There was this idea that we were going camping at the weekend, me and the other residential worker guy, and we were taking the girls and the guys away. And I was all like, wait, we're actually going camping where like they could just run away?
I think whenever I first started, I seen like a different side to statutory social work, because from coming from an office and you were just unendowed with paperwork and court reports and child protection reports, and so coming from that to working 3 days a week is my hours, and you're able to get out and actually do hands-on things with the kids. Like we would go to Dunseverick rock pools and go sea swimming,
it's amazing,
or we go surfing, like, and actually being able to get out and do them hands-on things with the kids.
Because I think I remember when I worked in the children's home, this whole idea of social pedagogy came out, which was around this idea that it was around children's homes being homes, and about this idea of the common third and hand, head and heart, which was about kind of being present with kids, doing things that maybe is uncomfortable. I remember going horse riding with a young girl, and I was petrified of horses, but as was she. And so for us, it was our common third. It was the thing we were both embracing to overcome it. I still hate horses, but I just loved that was a space where in the other statutory rules that I saw, it was black or white, and this just seemed to be a comfortableness in the grey area while still holding on to the black and white as the mandate as to why they exist and stuff.
I just think I enjoy it, like even spending that the time with the kids, like we would sometimes sit around in the foyer and like they'll come and they'll sit beside you, and if one of the girls, she'll come and like put her head on my lap, and I'll sit and I'll play with her hair, and just them really lovely moments, I suppose. Definitely make it worthwhile. I suppose obviously we do have chaotic moments where people like to wreck the house or they abscond, but definitely them lovely moments that you get are what make it worthwhile.
You touched a little bit there on when you shared about having a social worker, but is there do you think it changes your approach having had and come through cancer and had support from a social worker?
I definitely think it makes me a lot more empathetic.
Okay.
I think I'm a very empathetic person anyway, but I feel like I can relate to them on some level, not obviously the same level that they have social work involvement, but I definitely feel like I can relate to them a bit more.
Yeah. So. Okay. And I suppose you talked about how your age you're similar in age to them, and it brought me back to when I applied for this job, which I think is like 13, 14 years ago. And in my interview, I said the exact same thing. I kept saying over and over again, oh, I'm really close to their age and stuff like that, to the point that the guy on the interview panel said to the other girl, can I ask another question? And I could see she was freaking out because it was, no, you have to stick to the questions. And he turned around and said, and what happens when you grow up? And I said, I mean, that's what Botox and Peter Pan syndrome's for. And I feel now, 14 years later, I thankfully don't feel too old to be in this service, in a sense. But what does the future hold for Cathie, the social worker?
I suppose my long-term goal is your job. I'm coming for that.
That's okay.
Is like my long-term goal is working either for Cancer Fund for Children or Young Lives versus Cancer. Like that is the ultimate goal, to give back. Okay. I suppose you made me be a social worker. Like if it wasn't, I don't know, if it wasn't for you, I don't know what I would be doing.
I mean, I would, do you know, in those parallel worlds and universe and multiverse and stuff, I often wonder what would people's lives be like if this didn't happen, if cancer didn't come into their lives, and would they be on the same trajectory? Or is this where you're meant to be now and we haven't embraced that yet?
Don't know.
I know.
It's food for thought there.
You can come for a Young Lives versus Cancer social work job, maybe not my job. But even as an organization, I think one of the things that we do really well is around ensuring that people who have an experience of cancer become a part of every aspect of it. Over the years, you have fed into our project steering groups on the National Lottery project. You've came to, in fact, you might have been involved in this house at one stage, kind of
in a photo shoot.
Yeah. Yes. And so I think all of those things are important because then as an organization, as you've been involved over the years, you already know what it is that we stand for. And that makes it easier. When somebody comes in from the outside, getting that culture and getting that understanding of the charity, you already have seen it from the other side, the way it should be seen, easier rather than the staff coming in. So I hope that someday, maybe not my team, but anyway.
I definitely think like that's the ultimate long-term goal, I suppose. Like whenever I initially qualified, I always said I never wanted to work with children. And then I ended up in statutory frontline children's. And I suppose managed 2 years there and then moved to children's residential. And I'm sort of thriving there. I'm really enjoying it. There's no immediate plans to change. I know right now I'm not mentally or emotionally ready for your job.
But I think that is sometimes the beauty of social work. And I explain this to people whenever they're thinking about kind of starting into this career, is that you, unlike nursing, where you maybe become an adult's nurse or a children's nurse, and then you specialize in, say, surgical children's or like in dementia and stuff, with social work, you're trained well broadly, and that's your foundations. And you could very easily go into mental health, to addictions, to community support.
There's so many avenues, which I suppose whenever I qualified, because I qualified in Liverpool, I didn't know what the avenues were. I didn't know where to go, how to even get into social work. And I suppose then once, because I remember whenever I was changing jobs, they asked me where did I want to transfer to, and I went, well, what is there? Because I quite literally didn't know what avenues there was. And then I got offered children's residential, and I just took it, and I'm so glad I did. Like, I am thriving there.
Yeah.
So.
And what would be some of the strengths and skills that you bring to your job as a result of being diagnosed with cancer at the age of 16?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I think I'm a really, really supportive colleague. Like, if I see my colleagues having a tough time, like, I'm there to give them the support, or like if we're on the floor and there's something kicking off, I'm there for my colleagues. I'll link in with them afterwards. I'm always making sure my colleagues are okay. And I suppose for the kids as well, like, I'm a real, well, I think I am anyway, a real support to them.
Yeah.
I don't know what other skills I have. I suppose, like, I've got such a big personality, and I think not everybody likes a big personality, but I think that works well in children's, because obviously the children all have quite large personalities, and then we have some quieter kids as well. And I seem to just, the kids we have at the minute, I seem to get on with really well at the minute.
Yeah.
So
I remember some of the groups that you came to, and when I was planning the group work and doing all of that, you always popped into my head as the person that would be the first to say hello to the new person, but also the first to say, how are you, haven't seen you in ages, to the people that you've seen before. And I think there was always an adaptability to you and your personality that responded to whoever it was that you met. So I probably would assume that you don't just go in with this huge personality. You read the room, you know what the kind of scene is, and you choose how to be Cathie within that space.
Yeah, but I don't think I had that before my diagnosis.
Right, okay.
I don't think I was like that. I think before my diagnosis, now my mum would maybe correct me, but I think, like, I was quite quiet, and like, I remember being in school, and like, I wasn't, one of the popular girls as such. Like, I just had my friends, was quite quiet, like, a bit nerdy as such. Like, I was never a big loud.
Yeah.
My mum would maybe say I'm wrong. She always says I've been loud.
You hadn't come into yourself yet.
And I definitely feel like my diagnosis brought me to who I was meant to be.
Okay.
I definitely do think that.
Yeah. Do you see it as that your diagnosis and everything that you went through has led to who you are today, and in a way thankful for that, rather than right? Okay.
Yeah. I definitely, it's made me who I am, and what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I don't hate that I had cancer.
Yeah.
Like, and I
don't regret it.
Yeah, no. Like, I definitely think it's made me who I am. It's made me become the person I am today. It's made me choose the paths that I've took.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm seeing a Cathie who has embraced her experience, built upon her resilience, and made mature decisions at times, because being at university and becoming a social worker during COVID was such a strange time. And then to have to go into the workplace having not fully felt equipped. I didn't feel fully equipped, and I didn't have an experience during COVID. But to do that and still hold your head up high and have your standards and your morals and your boundaries, to now embracing, as you say, you're sharing about your cancer experience and having a social worker and using the strength, is, I think you've done pretty successfully well.
It's probably only within the last year, I feel, probably since I came to that job, that I have really sort of matured up. I mean, me a year ago definitely wouldn't be sitting having this lovely conversation with you. Me a year ago, I was still very much, I think, maybe not in denial, but still very much rebelling. And when I turned 25 last year, I feel like that sort of, like, I finally matured, and I just, my whole outlook and everything sort of shifted. So,
and I think there'll be another one of those shifts that might come in the future. It could be in 25 years time, it could be in 5 years time, I don't know, but I think that's, as social workers, we're change agents, as we're often called. Sometimes the change is, we don't often embrace the change that we have within ourselves. We can do it well for other people. If you could give advice to anybody who's about to become a social worker, what would it be? And if you could give an advice to your current social worker who's working in this field, what would it be?
Don't actually know what advice I would give. I suppose embrace it. Just embrace anything that comes your way. I suppose whenever, like, I first went in, I struggled massively and sort of floundered. And I think if I had the support from management and colleagues, I maybe would have been a different story. But it's now that I'm getting that support that I'm really thriving. So you have a good supportive team, you'll thrive, you'll flourish.
Yeah. And anyone who's about to come in and study social work and get into this profession, any advice you'd give to them?
Don't party too much. I definitely did when I first went away. So yeah, don't do that.
Any more constructive advice, Cathie?
I don't think so. I don't think I have constructive advice. It's hard. It's definitely hard. Like I find it hard. That adjusting from, especially if you go away. Maybe lower your expectations a little bit, because I know whenever I went away, I struggled. I cried every night. I'm dropping out, Mum. I want to come home, and I really struggled with being the only person who, like, I was left on my own, and I actually did struggle to make friends. Find that surprising, but I actually did struggle to make friends, and I suppose like there's only one girl now that I'm still in contact with from Liverpool, so maybe lower your expectations a little bit if you're going away and just work hard. Because it is that jump from like A levels to university is difficult. It definitely is.
And I suppose, is there an element of also then take advantage of the support services that are around to help with that kind of change, that shift? Did you do any of that? Did you access student support or student
I remember going to counselling. But I didn't like the counsellor, so
sometimes that makes a big difference. That can sometimes put people off.
But I suppose like whenever I first went to uni, it was all very traumatic because I had broke my collarbone.
That's right.
I had broke my collarbone, so like I went to uni with my arm in a sling. And then was having to come home like all the time for scans, and then I had to get surgery on my collarbone. I think that was around Halloween. So, and then having to fly back over, obviously, with the plate and screws. So, trying to manage all of that there was...
It's a lot. Yeah, when you think back now and you think, jeepers, how exhausting it sounds when you say it all out loud, but you were actually living it. Oh.
It's crazy.
Finally, if you could describe social work in one word, what would it be?
Like a good word or a bad word?
It can be any word.
I would probably say difficult.
Yeah,
like it's a difficult profession to get into. It's difficult when you're studying. It's difficult trying to navigate what field that you thrive in. But I suppose once you find your place, you do thrive. But like I still find it difficult. I mean, you still get burnt out. You still get drained. So but it's great. Even though I said difficult, it is great.
But I think that's just being honest. I think that's the reality of it. I don't think that's necessarily a bad word to use. It's just a reality check. Is don't think that this is going to be easy.
I don't think it's all rainbows and sunshines and unicorns. Like, it's not. But when things are good, it is all rainbows and sunshines. So
good. Well, thank you very much for talking to me today.
Thank you for having me.